Welcome back to ProBuild360 TV. Welcome back to the Onsite Podcast. Our guest today is Mike Leonard, CEO of the Building Alliance, and visiting lecturer at BCU. Is that correct?
Yeah, visiting professor.
Visiting professor at BCU on the subject of the built environment. Yeah,
buildings and manufacturing, actually. So the two things. Yeah.
You have a history in manufacturing. Is that right?
Yes, indeed. So I've been very lucky in my career to run some big building materials companies, and so I'm very much passionate about the fact that we produce about 80% of what we use in housing is actually still produced in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, the Building Alliance has a campaign. Is it Get Britain Building? That's
correct.
Quite focused on the fact that our manufacturers and distributors are. Is it something like 68 billion?
It's a huge industry with a fantastic multiplier. So for every £1 that you invest in construction, you get a £2.82 return for UK PLC. The autumn statements coming up, we've reissued a press release to suggest to the Chancellor that if he wants economic growth, then
that's the way to do it.
This is house building is the way to deliver that.
Yeah. Looking at the Building Alliance website and looking through your areas of activity, it just reads like a laundry list of sensible policies that we need in place. But I sort of summarised it in my mind as trying to create the best outcomes and the best future for the UK industry in two ways. One being sensible policies on a national level and refining construction details for the future in a way that's going to give us the best outcomes in that regard. Would that be fair to summarise it like that?
Yeah, so it's a great industry. It delivers the homes and the buildings that people need to live, work and enjoy. It creates hundreds and hundreds of thousands of quality jobs, which is what our young people need for the future. Yeah. I always talk about the construction industry in terms of the opportunities in it as being exceptionally wide. It is a complete industry. So yes, we can find roles for people who perhaps haven't enjoyed school and haven't enjoyed that, but have a fulfilling role being part of a construction team. Skilled workers in bricklaying, in plumbing, electricians, engineers, and then going on to the work like transport planners and architects, and there's a plethora of roles out there that appeal to everybody, and it's a very inclusive industry.
That's one of my favourite things about working in this industry.
Yes. Yeah.
I thought I'd start by asking you to talk to us a bit about the Future Homes Standard, because that's kind of where we're heading, really, isn't it? What is it, and what's your prognosis for it?
Okay, so the Future Homes Standard, not totally defined yet. So we're waiting for the final consultation to come out. We expect it very soon. It requires, firstly, an 80% reduction in carbon over the 2013 building regulations. It also requires the no gas, so fossil fuels gone. So predominantly electrically heated homes. Okay. So it's a major shift. 80% is a major shift. It's been done in two parts, because in 2021 the regulations changed, and that effectively meant 30% of the 80% came into regulation. That's now in play, and the intention at the moment is that in 2025 the full Future Home Standard would come into play. So for the first time in my long history in this industry, we've actually taken the opportunity to build things in advance of the regulatory change.
Yeah, okay. It's data driven.
Yeah, so we now actually got those homes built. So we've understood the process of transformation between Part L 2013 and 2021 and then 2025. We've done that, and then we get people to live in it.
Yeah.
So what we've learned so far, And Project 80 was a development of 24 homes in Birmingham,
Yeah.
12 in Handsworth, 12 in Edgbaston.
Yeah, which we visited and you showed us around, and it's very impressive.
Very impressive, yeah. So from that process, we learned that we can do it. We can build those homes.
Yeah.
So functionally, we can carry
Just
that.
on the specification, and so people know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
They were masonry build, traditional builds, were they? Or
Yeah, they were, absolutely.
Yeah.
They were masonry built, they had a 150 cavity.
Mm-hmm.
We used Unilin insulation.
is that full fill or part fill?
It's effectively a full fill, just so you've got a slight air gap. But it's PIR type board, if you like.
It's rigid, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that achieved the 0.13 in the walls, which is fantastic. You know, the thing that we've learnt most about from Project 80 is that behaviours change everything. So
Occupier behaviour, you mean?
yeah. So, there's some trade behaviours in there as well, which we need to look at hard as well. But certainly occupier behaviour, where you've got people who are perhaps not understanding fully how the system works, or have different aims and objectives to how the system was meant to perform. So, for instance, I've got a family in Handsworth down the road here who are living night and day at 24 degrees. And I have to say they're loving it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter what I say about that.
Well, 24 degrees, fairly cosy.
It's very cosy, but when you talk to that family, they came from a damp, wet, mould-driven house. So that's why they're loving it. The bills are going to be high, though, and let's be honest about it. Yeah, the bills are going to be high if you run your systems at 24 degrees.
Even with air source?
Even with air source heat pumps. So you know, it's a bit like driving your car at 90 miles an hour everywhere.
And what stage is Project 80 at now? It's in full occupation, and we're just absorbing the data at this point.
Yeah, so we published in June this year the interim report into Project 80, and in June 2024 we'll publish the full report. So Project 80 now is in that occupational phase now, and we're collecting the data, and that data is proving essential to policymakers. So for once we've got evidence-based decision making going on,
and
because
in
we can provide that
advance.
data. Yeah, fantastic. And we brought civil servants from London to look around it during its development. They also came to the launch of the interim report as well. So they're very, very much involved. Now, here's the rub. We reckon it costs about 15% more to build a future home standard house over 2013.
15% more?
About 15% more.
Gosh.
Developers, private developers, need to get a return on that. Yeah, so they need to. So they are going to cost more.
Well, I'd say 15% is about industry standard for the outcomes of commercial profit for private developers.
Yeah.
So there's your profit gone.
So the price has to increase. Yeah. So that's a realism. Yeah. So last Saturday, I spent the day selling houses. I'm not very good at that, but I tried at Nottingham, having trained all their staff in how to sell houses again.
Right. Okay.
And that's really about staff understanding the fabric of the building, understanding how the heat pumps contribute, what the ventilation system is, how the smart hot water tank works, how the PV drives lower energy costs. So we did all that, and then we started to sell them to consumers, and we built a training centre there so we could actually show people, what a 150 wall looks like. 150 cavity wall. They could see the makeup of the underfloor heating system. They could see, and people loved it, really interested. My submission is we haven't been doing that for the last few years. We've been selling houses on the basis of it's got a lovely kitchen and a nice bathroom, and there's a lovely school down the road. And that's about it.
How much energy are people looking at saving energy wise? Let's not think about the 24 degree house, but let's say a 21 degree house, which I think is what we call room temperature.
Yes.
21 degree house using solar to a cylinder for the hot water, and then a air source heat pump with underfloor heating and electric heaters upstairs, panel heaters.
So no, we've again, we did different things on Project 80. So we did have one with panel radiators in with a hot water heat pump.
Yeah,
As
okay.
a heating side, yeah. Where you've got on Project 80 on Handsworth side, we didn't use underfloor heating. We used radiators. They're slightly bigger radiators to accommodate heat pump systems, and they're upstairs and downstairs.
And those are connected to what? To the hot water cylinder?
To the heat pump.
Yeah.
And
right.
so the heat pump's driving that.
Yeah.
The hot water cylinder is connected to the PV.
Yeah, to the PV, and that gives you your hot and cold.
So it's giving you some of your hot water requirement through that.
Water,
yeah.
Right, okay.
And to put a figure on it in terms of how much you're going to reduce, quite difficult, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It is quite difficult because there's lots of variables in there. Overall, you will get a cost saving if you run that house properly and efficiently. But it's not massive. I don't want to sort of mislead people and think that this is the saviour to all your gas bills.
I thought then the next conversation that would be useful to have would be a little look at MMCs.
Yeah.
How we're getting on with modern methods of construction, the implementation of them, where we may be shoehorning it, or and so on.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us what you think at the moment, what your position is?
Okay, so and I'll include modular in this conversation. I think a lot of this agenda has been driven by propaganda and by government policy that has driven people to do things that they didn't necessarily want to do or think it was the right thing to do. And I don't think it plays well to future resilience. So what I mean by that is that what we've failed to do at the moment is understand the direction of travel for our climate and the potential outcomes of 40-degree summers, extreme weather events, of which we've been experiencing a few. Yeah, we haven't seen, I think we're on a third or fourth major storm this year or something. Yeah. That's the journey that we're on. We're going to see our buildings overheating in the future, and overheating is as big a killer as underheating, particularly with
I don't think a lot of people realise that.
No. Yeah. Particularly with an ageing population, it's a real threat. So it's my submission that firstly, the market should decide the best method of constructing. Politicians delving into that place is pretty dangerous stuff, really, because they're not experts in the built environment in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. I think we're on our 16th housing minister at the moment.
It's obscene.
It's a temporary job. We need to make sure that we build with resilience going forward. We think about those things. Thermal mass will become an increasingly big part of that agenda, so that we keep buildings cool in the summer and warm in the winter without defaulting to air conditioning, which is the default position. We've done it and we've seen that across Europe as well. That that in effect would put paid to our efforts to reduce energy, because we'll be running systems 365 days a year. And that's a massive problem. So I think let the market decide is my first thing. I
agree with that entirely.
Let people decide what the best solution is. Modern methods of construction aren't very modern. Funnily enough, they've been around for a very, very long time. To me, it's not about speed of construction either. It's about efficiency in construction. So it's about doing the right things in the right order, and for house builders, building out at the pace of their sales.
This was something I was thinking about before you came in, is that it's all about speed for modern methods of construction. I think that's the main benefit, right? But that's only a benefit if you're just your only factor for deciding how we do things is speed, commercial, return on investment, and so on. But that shouldn't be just the only factor. No,
and I think with the economy the way it is, and people having to get longer and longer mortgages to pay for their properties, etc., then the concept of a 60-year design life seems incompatible with the economics, but also with the environmental position. So let's be honest. The thing that going back to your sort of MMC question, there are things that you can prefabricate and do. And,
yes, of course. I mean, we use roof trusses.
Yeah.
There's a fantastic example of prefabrication. That it just works.
Correct. Yeah, it does rim the roof and this sort of stuff, and chimneys and stuff like that. We don't use a chimney now as a chimney, but we want a chimney there for aesthetic reasons. So GRP chimney. Yeah, there are plenty of opportunities to do that. I would argue that the term off-site manufacture. Well, as far as I know, we've been off-site manufacturing just about everything for as long as I can think. Yeah. We don't make the bricks on site.
We haven't got kilns for baking bricks on site.
Absolutely right.
Not for about 500 years.
Absolutely. So there's lots of myth in this journey.
It's politicised.
Yeah, for sure. And to make matters worse, some of the social housing the cost of social housing has been driven up to get an inferior product, in my opinion,
100%.
just because of legislation. And then we've seen huge amounts of money pumped into the modular industry, which has just been lost because those companies have now gone bust.
So many.
So that's, to me, that's. If the public understood how their taxpayers' money is being squandered, they would not be happy. But there you go.
Yeah. So I thought that I'd ask you to, in summary of all of the work that you do, I like in everything that I do. If I want to create improvement in something, I like to have an ideal to aspire to and something like a negative thing that must be avoided. So I thought I'd take like a heaven and hell view of the future of the UK industry. So let me start with hell. What big things could we get very wrong if we're not careful, and what would be the result of that for the next, say, 10 to 20 years of UK construction?
Right now, if I'm concerned about the housing market. It's housing starts are down 50%. 50%. We're on track at the moment to deliver about 120,000 homes this year. It's the lowest.
Really, that's very low.
The lowest on record. For in recent years.
It was about 230,000 last year.
Yeah, even go back to 2008, we did better.
Wow.
So we're in a bad place. Yeah.
On that particular point, MP Christopher Pincher, he did some research about the SME sector and delivery of housing, and I think it was about 1989, 39% of new homes were delivered by SMEs. Now we're at about less than 7 or 8%.
Correct. Yeah. So we've seen a market distortion in that respect, and we need to bring the SMEs back into the housing market in a big way.
And with 600,000 net migration into the country at the moment.
Yeah. Fundamental to housing delivery has been planning.
Yes.
And
which has become difficult.
It's become very, very difficult, and for a variety of reasons. Obviously, public not liking new development, but also planning officers and very much under resourced now. So council cuts in planning teams and everything,
and heavily bureaucratic. So when your system is heavily bureaucratic and you're under resourced, it's a nightmare.
So I think to answer your question, Hal would see us not changing those things really. Right. Not fundamentally. Right now, we're seeing factories close. We're seeing skilled workers going out of our industry when we absolutely need. So, hell would be not investing in British manufacturing of building materials and that skill base that we need. We need to invest at scale in that to do that. If we don't do those things, that's what hell looks like, because we've got a self-fulfilling prophecy here where our housing market becomes imported porter cabins from China.
Yes, yeah, that does sound like hell.
That's hell.
Go for heaven then.
Okay, go for heaven. So heaven says that we get some consistency into the housing market.
Yeah.
So I'm not particularly interested in these wild claims by politicians of 300,000, 380,000 homes a year and all this sort of stuff. What we need is consistency, not spikes and falls, because that allows everybody to invest both in the skills base, the manufacturing capacity, long-term planning, if you like, and business models like yours, where you employ people rather than subcontract everything. Yeah, so that you need that certainty to bring that about. So my heaven would see us delivering 200,000 homes a year, every year. I'll call it a minimum because I'm quite happy if you go above it. But a minimum, and that's mandated by law. Let's just do that.
I think that's a very fair number. And I thought that finally I'd just ask you, if you were going to build your own home, your forever home, and it needed to be resilient, it needed to be have energy security, potentially even going towards like off-grid, levels of energy security and that sort of thing. How would you build it? What fabric? What energy systems? What would be your priorities?
So, funny enough, it'd be a brick and block home.
Yeah.
But it would have solid floors, first and ground floor.
Solid concrete floor.
Yeah, probably
on the first floor as well.
Yes, very much so.
Would you do that as a hollow rib and pour it, or
you can do it a number of ways. You can do it being block if you like. I'm okay with that.
So a solid first floor.
But not a timber floor.
Okay.
And I would have solid partitions as well.
Solid partitions. Okay, cool.
So I would I'd go for an air tightness level of around 3 or 4. I wouldn't go to complete air tightness. But I would have a proper PIV type of ventilation system, a whole house ventilation system in, so not mechanical ventilation, but passive intervention. So but change of airflow is important in housing. I'd probably go heat pump at this stage because I think it's future proofing it, and PV, and a smart water cylinder that heats the amount of water I'm going to use. I'd make it energy efficient as well as thermally sound, and very, very solid.
That's I didn't think about that. Go with solid partitions and first floor. That's a real upgrade.
So that's pretty where I'd take things.
Do you think there's any sight of that happening?
There are builders building to that specification. There are.
So it's commercially viable.
Yes, it is. Yeah, very much so, and people love it. And that's one of the things I found from just showing people, what a 150 wall looks like, and it's a big wall.
It is.
It's a big wall, and you look at the floor makeup when you've got underfloor heating going on, which is something I put in, by the way. And people go, wow, that's absurd. People, this is the biggest investment you ever make. People want a solid investment. They want to bang on the walls and feel like they're solid, not going anywhere. That's what customers actually want if you ask them. And some of this lightweight stuff that we've seen flapping around in the wind has been building. It's not doing that job.
It seems to me like the bigger the volume, the house builder gets, the worse quality it gets. It's getting really, really bad.
There's a high risk around that, and part of their problem is the subcontractor nature of the delivery as well. So on the project I'm working on at Keepmost at the moment, on the heating and ventilation systems, we've got 4 different subcontractors covering PV, underfloor. These people don't talk to each other and everything else.
Difficult.
Then you've got a potential problem there, because you're delivering a system, not a range of components.
Well, you mentioned our business model and the way that we attempt to minimise subcontracting as much, but we call it integration.
It's really good.
Having one solid workforce, coordination between the various departments, and it's worked so well for us, and we're just a little SME. You've known us for long enough, Mike. But that.
No, it's great. It's bang on, and that's the model you'd like. But to deliver that at scale,
it's difficult, of course.
You need certainty.
Yes, you would.
You need certainty. You would. And the reason that the subcontract model is so popular to house builders is because of the cyclical nature of the industry. So right now, they've gone from delivering 180,000 to 120. They don't have that cost of that labour force. They just don't employ the subcontractors anymore.
So to scale up that conceptually from what we do to what like a Bovis, for example, would do, the thing, what you mean by certainty is having the pipeline
The order
work,
book, yeah.
right?
The order book, yeah.
The reason we've got the pipeline work is because we're committed to quality and so on in such a way that that pipeline is always full. Maybe if the big house builders took on their own workforce, employed engineers, tradies, and so on, full time, committed to that company, they'd increase quality and therefore have a more certainty in their pipeline.
I think that's an ideal world.
Yeah,
but they're
maybe a bit.
But they're in the spec housing market,
right? Yeah.
So they're building houses with the hope that they're going to sell them.
Right.
That's
the difference.
They haven't got a client. They're going to try and sell them. And my experience from last Saturday was that there's plenty of demand out there. Yeah, they love the homes that we built, but for one reason or another, everybody I spoke to couldn't proceed. They perhaps got a house to sell, or they couldn't get a mortgage on that level, or whatever it might be. There's always a barrier and it's not demand.
No, it's not demand.
Demand. I want it, but I can't get it.
Yeah.
So it's a different set of circumstances. Yeah.
Well, we better keep trying.
Yes.
And we better keep talking.
Yeah.
As we are today.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll get some stability, some certainty, a positive future.
I hope so, because it is a great industry, and we haven't talked much about how we bring people into the sector, but that must be one of our priorities as well. So how do we attract those young people in and get them to recognise that a career in construction, in whatever role you want to go into?
Well, we've got people that are bringing. I think this year we've had 4 people that have been with us for several years that their children are now working with us.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
We've got apprentices in the electrical department, in groundworks and bricklaying. We've got young lady in accounts and so on. The children of people that have been with us for years.
Yeah, that's brilliant, and that also illustrates the range of jobs, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when people say you can work for a builder, you think, well, I'm going to be up to my knees in mud and whatever. But
when you're as integrated as this, there's an even bigger range. We've got the interior design department. We've got the supply chain lined up.
Yeah.
So, well, Michael, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.